What's going on, everybody? It's Brian Trippe. Welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Investing Live podcast. I am located here in Birmingham, Alabama. Guys, we bring on the very best real estate investors, business leaders, and entrepreneurs all throughout this great country. Today is definitely no different. I have my very good friend, Mr. Dan Zitofsky. How's it going today, Dan?
Great, Brian. I appreciate it. It's great to finally be on. I know we're trying to hook up, and I appreciate your time and having me on with your group.
I'm super excited to have you on. Anytime I can get someone on the show who's been doing real estate for as long as you have, for as long as they have, it's such an honor. There's so much valuable information that we can get out of you to learn. You've been through market corrections. You've changed your business model. You wrote a book that we're going to talk about, Passive to Prosperous. I just read this a couple of days ago, flew through it. I love it when people write with big type, so I can get through it really quick, and I'm blind, so I gotta put on my nerdy glasses sometimes. So I love that. Straight to the point, some great tips in here. I'm going to ask you a couple specific questions from what I found in the book. And I also want to talk about today, obviously, potential shifts in what's been going on in the real estate industry. How we've had corrections in the past, you've survived them. We may potentially be seeing another one here very soon. Want to get your opinions and thoughts on that. Also want to talk about your group, your Facebook group. You have a very powerful group called Become a Real Estate Investor with Dan Zitofsky. So we're going to talk about that and what we can get. We're going to talk about mindset. We're going to talk about your Passive Wealth Academy. We're going to talk about a lot of awesome stuff on this show. But first, before we do any of that, Dan, for the few people that don't know who you are, tell them who you are and what you currently do in real estate.
Great. Once again, I'm Dan Zitofsky. I'm with Zitofsky Capital Management. That's our business leg of the business. We also have Passive Wealth Academy, where we do a lot of instruction and teaching in the business in different verticals. But what I do is, where I specialize in this business is I raise capital to acquire non-performing assets, and I turn those into performing assets as turnkey rentals in emerging markets, helping other investors build their wealth. And I do it by becoming the bank. I try to become the bank on deals so I can create passive income, true passive income. And doing that allows me to reach my vision, which is to do what I want, when I want, how I want, with whom I want, anytime I want. And that's ultimately what most people are looking for, is time. And that's what I do. Is I actually worked hard for the last 8-9 years, really generating time in my life to spend with my family.
Let's talk about that for a second, because I think one of the most interesting parts of this entire book was the introduction. It was, it's your story. And I think a lot of us get into real estate with the idea that we want financial freedom, we want time freedom, we want all these things. The quote you just said has been my mantra from literally day one. I want to do whatever I want, whenever I want, with whoever I want, with no financial consequences. That's been my quote, my mantra from literally day one, 2012, when I started this. Most people get into it for those reasons. However, most people do not actually get that. They don't find that. They end up creating themselves like jobs. And you say in your book that you're working over 100 hours a week consistently. And because of that, your family life was kind of taking a hit. Just talk about that evolution for you to go from just killing it, just crushing it, and just like working so many hours, sacrificing a lot of the personal stuff, to figuring out, like you just said, maybe 8 or 9 years ago, hey, you know what? I want to really work hard and build this so I can have the time freedom. The reason I got into this.
Well, it goes way back into my family growing up. But long story short, on that side, we grew up. It was a tough life. I wasn't on the streets or anything, but it was a tough blue collar life. Didn't have the best childhood growing up. Really was on my own. I was a teenager, basically kicked out of the house for no reason when I was 18. It was just, we had no money, and it was a tough upbringing. Let's just keep it like that. And I always thought that, hey, I'm going to turn around and I'm going to make a lot of money one day. Like a lot of kids, I'm going to be wealthy. I'm going to make a lot of money. And I thought that was the sign of success, right? So I was out there. We didn't have vacations. We didn't have nice cars. We didn't have all the nice things, wealthy people had. And I always said, that's what I'm going to have one day. And I got the bug and I started doing real estate. I started flipping properties and I was transactional. and I'm making $50,000, $60,000, $80,000 on a property. I'm like, how could I do this more, right? And then I got to the point where, okay, I'm paying my bills, and I was good. And then all of a sudden, I wanted to drive the expensive cars because I wanted to impress people. I wanted to have the nice watches like we got. I wanted the boats. I wanted the vacations, which I'll never give up vacations. But I wanted everything that everyone thought was successful. And then I went, I grew up in a household where my mother was never there. My father was barely ever there at the time. Not that he was bad. He was working, and then he doing his own thing. He wasn't a family type guy. But I got to the point where I thought I was the king. I thought I was not only the king in the street, because everybody was like, wow, look at this guy driving these beautiful cars. This guy's got boats. And my ego was getting pumped up at that time. That's all that was happening. But at home, I thought I was the king too. And my wife driving any car she wanted. She didn't have to work, wearing jewelry she wanted, going wherever she wanted. But she really wasn't the type. She wasn't a big spender. It was me. And I still remember like it was yesterday. We had a huge argument. I missed some kid stuff. We had a huge argument. And man, it was crushing because she turned around and she started telling me like, I'm just like my parents. I'm not there for the kids. And I was like, how can you say that? All I'm giving you, look at the cars you have, look at the jewelry you have, look at the vacations you have. And she just cut me up. It was like, we don't have you. So what's the difference? And I was devastated because I didn't know how to do anything else. And I thought I was, King Dan at the time, bringing in all this money. And all I was doing was feeding my ego. So it was basically like, I'm losing my kids. They don't know who I am. I'm never around. My wife's not there. I couldn't go out to dinner on a Sunday. It's at 10 o'clock at night. Contractors calling me, realtors are calling me. I'm outside missing the whole dinner. We'd have to go on vacation. So I had no cell phone service or no internet service. I couldn't do work. It was getting out of control. So at that point, I realized there's if I want to make all this money and flip properties and be transactional, I'm going to lose my family basically. So what do I do? And I didn't know what else to do at that point. And I tell people, I said, I turned around and said, well, I could do rental properties, but most people are making $300-$400 a door on rental properties, right? It's not sexy, but do it a couple hundred times, it starts to get pretty damn sexy. And at that point, I figured, what? I have rental properties. They're great, but it's still not truly passive income for me. It's a great start. That's where you have to start off. So what I did is I had a pendulum. I said, what? I started off like a Robert Kiyosaki. I used velocity to build up. And then I became almost like a Dave Ramsey guy in my head. I said, okay, let me start paying down these mortgages because I can't go poor not having a mortgage. Mm-hmm. Now you're going to have some idiot out there say, well, yes, you can because you can't buy properties. I understand that. But what I did is I take my money and I start paying down those notes. And that's how I've lasted through market cycles. And there's been 3 cycles. And obviously the worst, 2006 through 2008. I've lasted through that cycle because I didn't have a lot of debt. And I also stopped playing in these very cyclical markets where there's big ups and big downs. I stay in emerging markets. You're in a great one in Birmingham. I stay in those great markets where it's steady economic development. There's infrastructure. There's good quality jobs, good schools, low taxes, low crime, those kind of areas. So that's what's helped me where everybody else is out there shooting for big wins all the time, the home runs. I shoot for singles. So I turned that into essentially helped investors build their business because a lot of investors want to own rental properties in emerging markets, but they're doctors, lawyers, CEO of companies, your average everyday worker, and they either can't get a mortgage, they don't want to manage the property, they don't want to deal with the contractors, they don't want to deal with the property managers. So what I turned around, I started selling them those properties, and I was holding the mortgages for them. So they would put down a percentage, 30% of $20,000, and I would become the bank. And then people would say, well, you still have money in the deals. Well, then I learned very strong and it was in my book, how to sell partials. So I started selling partial mortgages off to get all my money back, plus a profit. Then I learned collateral assignments. I started doing that. But ultimately, it's always a shift in your business. And now we're to the point where over 60% of the deals, we have over 600 doors, and over 60% of them are seller finance notes. And the rest of them are owned properties, rental properties. And I literally don't flip any more than 1, maybe 2 properties a year that don't economically make sense to do anything else, but they're a very high value in a flip. I'm not a transactional guy. I get to go away when I want. I mean, I just spent in the last, since April, I've spent 2.5 weeks on vacation with my family. All summer, I try not to do much as far as real estate work if I don't have to. A lot of my work now is speaking, coaching, mentoring. And you talked about the first chapter of my book. That's been the biggest blessing to me. So sometimes you take something bad and turn it into something good. What my true passion is and what I love to do is speaking as a keynote speaker at events where it can change. And it doesn't have to just be real estate events. I've been brought in and paid as a paid speaker now to some events where I'm actually brought into sales organizations where I come and I teach them about mindset, roadblocks, adversity, those type of things. I've also been consulting companies. I worked with an insurance company. I've worked with a couple of dental practices where I get in and I help them build their business from the top down. So those kind of things have helped me, and that's what I truly love doing. That's what I'm truly passionate about. So, and the money that comes in, it allows you, money is not bad. Money has allowed you, like I said, we met because we went to a fundraiser. I think we raised over $60,000 with Ramon in Miami. So the money allows you to do amazing things for organizations that can't do it for themselves. And we do it quietly. That's what's so nice about guys like yourself and myself and Ramon. We don't go out there and say, hey, we raised $60,000 for this organization, but it allows us to do that because we're making money. So we get to use our money. Our money is a tool and a vehicle rather than us going out and feeding our ego with, car. And I'm not saying anything wrong with having nice cars because I still have nice cars, but, I'm in a different position now. But when people are out there and they're flipping properties and they haven't taken care of their home life and they're out there just to buy cars to feed their ego, that's where it became a problem for me. And I fell into the trap. So I was guilty of it.
Yeah. Dan, you just gave me a ton there, and I want to touch on. I took a lot of notes here. I want to touch on a lot of things you just talked about. The first thing I want to talk about is what I understand. Your story and why you wanted to transition out of being the transactional real estate investor, because we know the transactional stuff, it's a one-time payday versus the stuff that's going to pay you over and over, whether it's a rental, owner finance stuff. We get that. Where did that come from? How did you learn, or where did you learn that strategy? And I understand the mindset shift you knew you needed to get out of it. Where did that come from? Like, how did you learn those new strategies?
Well, I knew growing up, my grandfather was my mentor. He came here from Europe. He had no money, worked his butt off as a furrier, used his money to buy an apartment building. And I used to go with him as a little kid. He would collect rent, and I was like, this is pretty cool. You just knock on somebody's door to give you money. I didn't understand the concept. And that's how, at almost 19 years old, I bought my first condo when I was going into the Navy, and I started using that money. And I was making more money as a real estate investor than I was as an E1 in the Navy. And I learned, I said, this is pretty cool. And I came out and I started buying some more rental properties. So I was always investing in property and rentals, but the rental portion of my business was very low end compared to my flip business or my wholesale business. So my transactional business was a lot bigger than my passive business. And when I made that switch, I mean, I really owe it to my wife at that point, because if she didn't slap me in the head with, hey, like, you're not a good father, you're not a good husband at the time, and you're going to lose your family, well, I really probably wouldn't have made that switch. So I can't even take credit for that. It was basically, do I want to be divorced like my parents were? Do I want to have a strange relationship with my kids like my parents did? Or do I want to, like, visit reality and realize, you know what, money and items are not making me a good husband or a good father. Time would make me a great father. I just didn't know I just couldn't figure out how to have time and flip these properties the way I was doing them. So I had to figure it out pretty quick. And there was no, I grew up in an era, I started in this era where there was literally, they didn't have people like you doing events in your hometown to teach people, to coach people. I wish I had guys like yourself or myself or the plenty of others, because there are a lot of great mentors out there. There's a lot of scammers out there, but there are great mentors out there, right? And I wish that back then there was there was Russ Whitney, there was Carlton Sheets, there was those type of guys. There was like 3 of them. And I went to an event when I was 17 years old, and I listened. It was Russ Whitney, it was my first event. But they didn't have the one-on-one true mentorship like you guys are giving out in Birmingham, or a number of great mentors I know give. And so I really had to do this on my own. I kind of learned on my own. I failed a lot. I'm not going to tell you I didn't fail, and it's okay to fail. But every time I failed, I learned from it. And I got to be blessed that, I have good. One of the things I'm an expert in, besides creating wealth, is raising private money. And I teach how to raise private money. And I have a great amount of private money behind me. And I've never lost a dollar for an investor, never a dollar for them. I've lost my money more than I care to share. But I've never lost investor any money, and that's important. And if your communication is great with your investors, if you do proper due diligence with your investors, and you take care of them better than you take care of yourself, that's the rules. You'll always have money behind you for your deals. So, so doing that, I just had to kind of take it piece by piece. And as an entrepreneur, there's never a straight road. You don't have a VIP lane to success. There's always you're always merging around traffic. You're always making shifts because the market does shift. And if somebody tells you, like if I tell you, hey, I'm in a different situation now at my point in my career because I'm okay. But if I was out there truly actively investing in flips or wholesaling deals or rentals, and I'm in one market and that's all I did, and I can tell you in 10 years from now I'm going to do the same thing, I'd be lying to you because that's not true. It's not going to happen.
So I want to go back to something that you said also, that rentals are not truly passive. So you knew you needed to make that shift in your life to more of something that was more recurring revenue, but you kind of realized maybe pretty early on that rentals are not truly passive. I 100% agree with that. They're not truly passive. And you made the shift, it sounds like, to almost like just becoming the bank. Like we learn in Rich Dad Poor Dad, be the bank, not the banker. And that's like one of the first things I remember when I first got into real estate. It's one of the first things I remember. I want to be the bank, not the banker. I think a lot of real estate investors, I just say that you, me, and the few other people I know, the longer we do this, the more we realize that the real wealth is in being the bank. Just talk about that for a second.
Well, it is. That's the true path of passive wealth. You don't worry about tenants, toilets, or trash being the bank. It's great passive wealth. But how do you get to that point? I was a private lender for about essentially when I was in the Navy, I was a private lender and I didn't know it. But I was a true private lender and hard money lender for about 16, 17 years now. So the problem with that is it was always short term, right? You lend somebody money for 6 to 9 months, sometimes a year. You get paid back, you're out of the deal. It's still kind of transactional, even though it's nice because your hands off. But a good hard money or private lender is not truly hands off. You want to do due diligence on the deal. Great operators like ourselves become great private lenders because we know what to look for. We know how to protect money, and we tell you it's not a deal. It's not a deal. But why I like what I did is, one is I figured I had to get into to own the properties. Right? There's no way to really sell a finance the right way unless you own the properties. Because I buy distressed mortgages. I'm a note buyer, right? And even in that business, you're buying really scratch and dent deals. So there's a lot of work up front, a lot of work. And there's a lot of risk involved in note business. And a lot of gurus are out there teaching it, but they're not telling people about all the risk. They're telling you about these great returns they make without any risk. Nobody talks about the risk. But as a note investor for many years myself, there's a lot of hard work in that and a lot of risk. So I turned around and I said, you know what, I'm going to create my own notes. So what I do is I turn these properties into turnkey rental properties. I sell them off to investors. They are managed. They're professionally managed, not by me. I set them up with a professional property management company. I have my contractors go in there, fix those properties up. So they're fixed up, they're rented, they're managed professionally, so you don't have to do it. So it kind of is passive. You might just have to write a check here or there if it's not rented or there's work that needs to be done. But what it allowed me to do, it allowed me to both help investors build their portfolio, and what it did for me is allowed me the benefit of not worrying about tenants, toilets, or trash. I get paid no matter what happens. So when there's always a give and take, right? There's always it has to be mutually beneficial. So let's say an investor comes to me with $100,000 and says, Dan, I want to work with you. I have $100,000 and I want to buy properties. I might or might not be able to get a mortgage for whatever reason. I might not, a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners, they don't have the ability to go to a bank and get a mortgage. They might have an issue with credit. They don't show their income on the books. But if they come to me with $100,000 and I sell them a property for, let's say, $80,000 and they have cash, they can only buy one property, correct? But now if they come to me and it's an $80,000 property and I take 30% down, which is $24,000, I now can sell them 4 properties. So I just built their net worth way up because eventually they're going to pay me off. If they do nothing else, don't take any of the money for their pocket, they're going to pay me off. And if their properties don't go up in value at all, they can own 4 properties, which is $320,000 for the same $100,000. And what it did for me, it allowed me to get all my money back, and it allows me to create 4 more seller finance notes. So I help them and I help myself, and it's an ultimate dream.
So I appreciate you explaining the exit part of that, which you do in your book as well.
Right.
Let's talk about how you get into these properties, because you use private money. Like almost half this book is devoted to how to raise private money.
Sure.
But I want to know, how are you using the private money in order to get into the deals? And then we just learned about how you exit them. How are you getting into the deals with the private money?
I'm buying, there's multiple ways. I'll buy distressed notes. I will buy REOs.
With other people's money?
Sure. Yeah, I raise money. So let's say I'll raise $500,000 from one investor. I'll go out and I'll buy, let's say 15 to 20 REOs from the bank. I deal a lot with the banks, but you don't have to deal with the banks. You can do one-on-one. Like you teach people how to buy deals, acquire deals. They can go out and buy one deal and do this, right? So I acquire notes, I acquire REOs, I work on tax leads, and I work with distressed sellers. So I'll work with a distressed seller that's selling a property. It could be a property that'll sell me for, let's say, $40,000. I'm putting $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 into it. It's worth $100,000. That's how I'm doing my deal. So I'm raising private money. And then what I do is I work to get my investors their money back first before
How do you do that, Dan? Take us, if you don't mind, I'd love for you to walk us through like a case study.
Okay.
Like give us like one specific example. I love this. I think there's a lot of value in this. Walk us through one specific scenario that maybe your bread and butter scenario that you use, where you raise private money, you get into a deal, and then you exit it. I know you have many different profit streams of revenue through exits. So just take us through a case study, which you do by the way in your book. There's about 4 or 5 of these in the book, and I think chapter 9. So guys, definitely check out this book. We're gonna tell you how to get it here at the end.
No, I appreciate that. That's a great question. I love to do this. Usually it's a whiteboard and I'm on napkins and I'm doing all that, but off the top of my head, I could do this. So I just bought 14 properties in Dayton, Ohio a couple months ago. We're working on fixing them up. I sold 7 to one investor already, but let's just take one property. One property, we bought it, let's say for, I think $18,000. Property is worth about 70, all right? We put about $20,000 into it, right? So that's right around $40,000 we have in that property, okay? We sold it for $80,000. We take 30% down, which is $24,000 down, okay? So we leave $16,000 in the deal. This is if we don't collect any rent. A lot of our properties, remember, we're renting them out first and then we sell them. So we've collected rent. But let's say
real quick, let me just make sure everyone's following along. So you bought it for 18 to 20. You put another 20 in it, so you're in the deal for about 40K.
Right.
It's worth 80. You sold it for 80, but you took 20% down, 30% down,
30% of 20,000, whatever's greater.
Yeah. So you got 24,000 down, which you got 24 of the 40 that you're in it for back.
Right.
And so the 40 that you're in it for is private money that you raised.
The what? The 40?
The 18 purchase and then the 20 in rehab is all private money that you raised.
Yeah.
That's your own money.
We raise private money. So yes, exactly. So let's say we're in that, we took $24,000 down. We have $16,000 left in the deal. Mm-hmm. Let's say we want to turn around and pay our private lender back. We could either sell off payments, which means we do a 30-year amortization with a 10-year balloon, which is better than commercial banks right now. Mm-hmm. Okay, we give them a 10-year balloon. So it's 120 payments. Let's say our payments are $450 a month. I don't have it in front of me what they are. Let's say $450 a month. Okay, if we have $16,000 and we want to sell the payments to some investor that has, this is a partial. Let's say they have IRA money, 401k money, whatever it is. Let's say they have $20,000 and that's all they can invest. And they want to be truly passive. They want to they want to collect notes, right? We could sell them the payments. So we take $16,000, let's say divided by 4. We could sell them 40 payments, okay? 40 payments for $400 each. That gives us $16,000 back. We pay our private lender off. He's done. We sold 40 payments. That means that the person who bought the 40 payments will collect $450. We sold them for $400, so they make the difference. It's not exact. It's off a little bit, but I'm just for argument's sake here. Well, we sold off 40 payments out of 120. What do you think happens on the 41st payment?
It comes back to you. So you get the 80.
I get the next 80 payments back, so I can sell more partials. I can just collect payments.
And at this point, Dan, you're clear. You have it free and clear.
Oh yeah, I own it free. So infinite return. And I do this on almost every single one of my deals. I have pretty much infinite return within 12 to 18 months on all my deals. Because a lot of my deals, I'll keep them. I'll start renting them because I might not have a buyer right away. So I just put them in my portfolio. I start renting them out. I collect rents. Then I sell them off. But usually by the time I sell it off, I'm profiting money already because I sell it off with the down payment and the rent I collected. I'm already in the green. There's also collateral assignments I could do. So on the same deal, right? I sold it for $80,000, right? I'm just going to use my calculator here. Minus 30%. So I have $56,000. So I have a $56,000 note. So if I go to an investor, I say, Mr. and Mrs. Investor, I have a $56,000 note. I'm collecting $450 a month on. Would you loan me $30,000 on that? To the next person. Who's not going to say, yes, I'll loan you $30,000. Here's the deal. I'll give you $30,000 as a private money deal to a property that's fully rehabbed, that's rented, that's managed, where the investor that I sold it to put down $24,000, okay, and it's collecting $850 a month in rent, okay? And Mr. and Mrs. Investor, are you okay with 6, 7, or 8% return? Because it's very conservative. Nothing's guaranteed, but this is as conservative as they get. In a heartbeat, I could put. If I stood in your room when you speak and I offer this, almost every hand will go up if somebody has $30,000 in their IRA, and I could do it for $20,000. So now I take $30,000, right? $30,000. Let's say I pay them 8%. It's $200. It's $2,400 a year, right? $200 a month. I'm collecting $450 from my investor that I sold the deal to, right? I got $30,000. I took the $30,000 plus the down payment of $24,000. You follow? That's $54,000, right? Pay my investor back his $40,000. I put $14,000 in my pocket, and I'm making $250 a month profit. So how does that sound? And I have no responsibility, and it's all handled by the servicing company, which the borrower pays the servicing company. So I'm literally I don't collect the check. I don't do anything. ACH hits my account while I'm on a cruise all day long.
Dan, and then times 600, right? Times 300 or 400 or however many you have.
Right over 400 seller finance notes and right under 200 rentals right now.
So, Dan, talk about just the real estate climate that we're in today, where I think most would agree there's a little bit of uncertainty. Some people predict something's about to happen, but they've been predicting that for a couple of years, so we don't truly know. But there is a little bit of uncertainty, it seems like. Just talk about this strategy and why this strategy is right and great for the moment that we're in today, the market cycle that we're in today.
This strategy is always going to be great. I can tell you that. It's never, as long as you follow the rules of the strategy, it's always going to be great. And here's why. You have to make sure you're in. If you just, you're really lucky where you live. You're in Birmingham. You have Montgomery. You have Huntsville. You have Mobile. You have some great areas right there. I'm up in Delaware by Philadelphia. I'm not in the greatest area for this process. But if you understand what emerging markets are and you're very conservative, because you have to learn what emerging markets are, and you're very conservative in the type of investing you do. You're not looking for those big hits unless, and I'll tell you, even Warren Buffett says in the stock market, there's no one that could pick the right time to buy, the right time to sell. And if you could do that, you'd be a genius. You'd be smarter than all these great analysts. So this type of strategy works in any market. Now, I don't want to say crystal ball and say, listen, the market's going to come down, because like you said, I've been hearing this for 3 years already. And I tell people, listen, if you're going to keep talking about the market coming down, well, let me see you put your money up and short some of these REITs, and let's see how you really feel about it. Because you can keep talking about the market coming down, market coming down, and even the clock is right twice a day. Eventually, it's going to come down, but it's going to come down in those cyclical markets. And what I call those cyclical markets are your New York Cities, your Miamis, your Los Angeles, your Chicagos, Arizonas, those type of Washington, those type of areas. They will come down. They're going to come down. When they come down, they will come down hard. Now, if you're in an emerging market like the Alabamas, the Ohios, the Tennessees, the Oklahomas, the Indiana, the Michigans, where there's a ton of jobs, it's not based in one industry, well, then it's going to be fine. And when here's what I love about what I do, is when the mortgage industry takes a hit, I do even better because, people aren't buying houses, people are renting. When banks stop lending, my lending goes way up. So you have to be able to be flexible in your business model. But if you're sitting there and you're flipping houses, because when we were flipping houses, we were doing 3 to 6 at a time, always. I had 14 guys on my crew. 3 to 6 were going at a time. Now, if I got caught with my pants down, I'm screwed, right? Or if I'm developing properties in a market and something changes, I'm screwed. But I'm in an area where it's a great emerging market. There's a ton of jobs in that area, not just one company. There's a ton of jobs. People need housing, right? They're not going to stop working. I mean, I don't think Amazon's going to close down anytime soon. I don't think University of Alabama, Birmingham is closing down anytime soon. It's the biggest employer out there, right? Yeah. Your Walmarts, all those companies, your automakers, I don't think they're really, if one closes down, okay, they still have all the jobs, right? So that's why Birmingham is such a rocking market. And it's been like that. And people thought I was crazy 5-6 years ago when I started working there. Just like they thought Cleveland I was nuts and Dayton I was nuts. But the top, you look at top 10 places to invest and they're there. And I was always there before the curve. And they're going to be there, because of the amount of jobs that are there and people need housing. So get yourself in an area where people need housing, the numbers work, the economics work. And for me, the economics are kind of that 1-to-1 rent to value ratio. We need to be in that range. And I like the B2C areas. Single family homes. I've just gotten out of my last 2 multifamilies. I'm not big on the multis. I think that that's where we're going to have a huge wave soon. Agreed. Let me tell you, I'm revving up my cash because in 2006, 7, and 8, there were deals I could have got for a song and a dance. I didn't have the cash. I'm revving up my cash because all these people, the biggest thing out there right now is multi. I've been buying multis for years, right? And now all of a sudden everyone's jumping in multis the last couple of years, but they don't understand the economics of how multifamilies work. They're new. They're listening to what everyone's saying, but multis is where that's where people are going to get hurt. And that's where I'm revving up for. It's unfortunate, but if people are going to invest blindly and novicely and not do their due diligence, I'm going to definitely scoop up this time around because I'm telling you, in the next 3 to 4 years, there's going to be a ton of multis out there when the rates reset, right? In 5 years, the rates reset. When the cap rate, when the mortgage rates go up, net operating income comes down, cap rates go down. Plus, every 5 years, there's deferred maintenance people aren't going to have the money for. And when those loans reset, people are going to be screwed. So that's why I stay away from multis right now. I sold off for a song and a dance. And the people I sold my multis to, other than the last 2, the last big one we sold in Georgia, they bought it at a 5.8 cap. And I don't understand how in the world they're going to ever refi this thing if the rates jump a point and a half.
Unbelievable. I want to get back to the emerging markets because I think we were talking about, some of the strategies, the case study. Thank you, by the way, for doing that. I think that there's a lot of value in that. And then some people might be asking themselves, well, where can we do things like this? And you said, I'm fortunate. I'm in Birmingham, Huntsville, Montgomery, Mobile, by the way, not mobile.
Yeah, Mobile. I'm sorry. I got it right now.
But I want to point this out in your book. Chapter 3 in your book talks about timing and emerging markets. And right here on the first, on page 55, you write, the 2 easiest ways to get burned in this industry are to either invest at the wrong time, which a lot of times we can't really predict that. Sometimes we sort of can, but we can't really predict that, or in the wrong market. And so you devote an entire chapter on how to find these emerging markets, what to look for. And you include Birmingham right here in the chapter. And then the next logical question I think a lot of people are going to have, it's the next logical question I have. So once we've identified these emerging markets, well, Dan, I don't live there. How do I build a freaking team? How do I do this? How do I get boots on the ground to help me there? And you devote an entire chapter to that as well. And then you obviously talk about for a long period of time how to raise the money. You basically spell out your business plan in this book. And that's why I flew through it. I couldn't put it down. And guys, I highly recommend that you go check this out. It's called Passive to Prosperous. It's got Dan's big mug on it right there. And just Dan, just talk about the book in general. Like, what was it like writing it? I think it looks like it came out late last year. What was it like writing it? Was it therapeutic? Did you do it to try to help people? Just talk about the book in general.
Great question. I appreciate you asking that, because this book was almost 7 years in the making, believe it or not. It was one of those things I started, I put down, I said, well, this isn't right. Like you said, I mentioned Birmingham. Who knows, maybe in 5-6 years, I might change some of the places in there. But I wanted it to be perfect. It's like everything else in business, right? Everybody, instead of just doing it, you don't do it until it's perfect. And that's the biggest problem. And it's my first book that came out. And then it got to the point, for a good 2-3 years, it seemed like every new investor out there would do a couple deals and write a book. And I was like, I don't want to be seen like everybody else. I'm doing this because I truly want to help people. I want to help people like fast forward the issues that I went through. I want them to understand, like, that's why chapter 1 is so important. I want them to understand my mindset shift and why I made that change, because I see, I wrote this book seeing all the issues that people go through. And I tried to answer them, and I tried to keep the fluff. I told the publisher, for me to do this, I don't want this book to be 300 pages, because I don't like those books. I want it just info, just pack it with info. If you're not willing to do that, I'm not willing to do the book. So it was back and forth. And I have the trainings. I've done a lot of trainings on raising private money. I do a training now, live webinar we're launching for our build a $10,000 a month rental portfolio. That's coming. That's basically launched, and a live webinar is coming out. So, but I wanted to put in a book where I can actually help people, right? I don't want to talk about, hey, I have these cars. Hey, I have this boat. Hey, I'm sitting in front of a fake plane and I'm going on these fake vacations. Because what I always disliked about any event I go to is you sit at the event, and a lot of times I go, whether I'm speaking or I'm just attending, maybe to support somebody I appreciate in the business. I go and I say, well, you leave on a Sunday, and all right, Monday starts, and you don't know what in the world to do Monday, right? What do? We had a great event. Yeah, I understand I could be rich in this business. Yeah, I understand I could leave my 9-to-5 job. Yeah, I understand I could have the greatest life in the world. But what do I do day one? And I wanted them to understand that here's what you do, and how do you build boots on the ground? And it's so important to build boots on the ground, buy properties in Oklahoma. How do you do that? I don't live there. I live in Delaware. How do you go to Birmingham, Alabama? How do you go to Mobile, Alabama? And how do you do these things? And people don't know. And there's not enough people like what you're doing with your events out in Alabama, teaching and coaching locally. There's not enough people doing that and giving to the industry. And I even spoke about Ramon about doing events, the same thing. Like, let's turn an event where it's truly just full of content. Like, just give content, right? Everybody's got an agenda on an event, and you should have an agenda as a speaker. And what is your agenda? But if you give, you get, and it's always give to get. And it drives me insane when I give, and people don't take action. That's what bothers you. So that was the whole realm of the book, and it took so long because I just kept changing it over and over and over again. And I wrote this book. I didn't have a ghostwriter write it. And that's the hardest thing in the world, because you could write a book. Now I know how to write a book, and I'm already working on the next book. And you could write a book in 4 hours, to be honest with you. To do it, I learned how to do it now. You can do a book in 4 hours yourself. You're done. You give it off to the editor. You give it off to the publisher. You're done. But all I say is understand why you're writing a book. Understand what you want to get out of that book, what you want to perceive in that book, who you want to help, who your audience is. I know exactly who the audience is, right? Anyone that's new or advanced in the business, and new in the business wants to get in, or people that want to change their model to truly create passive income and passive to prosperous life. And I give you the steps from step 1. There's no fluff in there, why I did it. And then from step 1 all the way to the end is how to raise the money, find the markets, build the team, find the properties, sell or finance the properties, build the management company, everything start to finish. And that's what I wanted. And it was me deleting a lot of stuff because, I was rambling on, like I do here. I'm just so passionate about what I'm doing. I just ramble in the book. I was rambling about why I did it, back to why I did it. And I just had to cut out a lot of stuff. And I just wanted it to be perfect, which is probably not perfect because nothing ever is perfect. But I got to the point where I read it through and I was like, wow, if people cannot at least start doing this business right way after this book, they're just not taking action. And
sure.
that's where I needed to get to.
Yeah. Well, I loved it. It took me about an hour and 15 minutes, hour and 20 minutes to get through it. Guys, I highly recommend you go check this out. We'll link it up in the show notes. Also, Dan has a Facebook group that I highly recommend that you get into, where he gives away tons of content. Tons and tons of content. It's a Facebook group called Become a Real Estate Investor with Dan Zitofsky, and we're going to link that up in the show notes as well. Dan, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. We could have talked for hours we didn't even get the mindset and vision and we took action a little bit. But I know that you're diverse, so you can talk about tons and tons of things. But I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing with us some case studies and sharing with us some very specific, actionable things that we can do to get started right away.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for having me, Brian. I appreciate it. And like I said, anyone in the group that wants to reach out to me in the group, get in the group, and feel free to post questions, and we're happy to answer anything you guys have. Thanks so much.
Guys, we love you so much. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. We got tons of incredible guests on the horizon. You don't want to miss them. We love you so much, and we'll see you next time.